Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the USS Reliance engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was a cramped sanctum of flickering screens and coiled cables, lit by the cold blue glow of tactical displays. Her crew, 3 souls she'd handpicked from the remnants of Earth's shattered fleet, moved with the quiet efficiency of people who'd long ago traded fear for focus. There was Marcus Hale, the chief engineer, his grease-streaked face buried in a console, muttering calculations under his breath. Beside him, Lieutenant Kira Voss, the pilot, her fingers dancing over the navigation helm, eyes sharp as she scanned the starfield beyond the viewport. And then there was Doc Reyes, the medic-turned-makeshift comms officer, patching signals from the colonies below. Earth hung in the void like a bruised marble, its continents scarred by orbital strikes that had lit the night sky for weeks. The alien fleet had come without warning, sleek, predatory ships from the Krell Dominion, led by Admiral Rha'Tol himself. His declaration had boomed across every frequency. Earth's orbit was claimed, its resources forfeit, its people subdued or scattered. But the Reliant, a battered corvette repurposed from a mining tug, had slipped their net. For now. Status on the drive, Marcus? Elena asked, her voice steady, though her mind raced through contingencies. She'd always been the cautious one, the planner who weighed every angle before pulling the trigger. Hale didn't look up, his wiry frame hunched over a diagnostic panel. Holding at 80%, Cap. That last skirmish fried the secondary coils, but I've got her purring. We can dodge for another hour, maybe 2 before she overheats. Kira swiveled in her seat, her short-cropped hair catching the light. Witty as ever, even now, she cracked a half-smile. Dodge? That's optimistic. Those Krell hunters are like ticks on a hound. Once they latch, good luck shaking 'em. Elena nodded, her gaze fixed on the main screen where red blips multiplied. Rha'Tol's vanguard closing in. The Admiral's flagship, a behemoth called the Voidreaver, loomed at the formation's heart, its hull etched with the Dominion's jagged sigils. They'd underestimated humans before, thought us primitive, scattered. But Elena knew better. Grit wasn't in their shiny tech. It was in the choices made when the lights went out. Incoming transmission, Reyes announced from his station, his voice calm despite the sweat beading on his brow. He was the brave sort, the one who'd patched wounds mid-battle without flinching. It's them. Demanding surrender. Patch it through, Elena said. No point in silence. Let Rha'Tol hear the defiance in her tone. The Admiral's holographic form materialized, towering and scaled, his eyes like polished obsidian. Human vessel, he rumbled, the translation matrix struggling with his guttural accent. You trespass in claimed space. Power down and prepare for boarding or face annihilation. Elena's jaw tightened. She leaned forward, meeting his gaze. This is our space, Admiral. Earth's orbit isn't a prize to be snatched. Turn back or we'll make you regret it. Rha'Tol's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Your primitive craft cannot withstand us. We have crushed worlds greater than yours. The transmission cut, leaving the bridge in tense quiet. Kira whistled low. Charming fellow. What's the play, Cap? We can't outrun them forever. Elena glanced at the debris field drifting nearby, Earth's graveyard belt, a tumbling chaos of wrecked satellites, spent missiles, and the husks of fallen ships. It was a hazard, a snarl of metal that could shred a hull in seconds. But also cover. An idea sparked, rough but promising. We don't run. We hide. Marcus, can you rig the emitters to mimic a derelict signature? Hale grinned, already pulling tools from his belt. Give me 10 minutes. It'll be like we're just another piece of junk. As the Krell ships tightened their net, the Reliant veered toward the belt's edge, engines flaring briefly before throttling down. The first fragments loomed, twisted girders glinting in the sun's harsh light, a silent testament to humanity's losses. Elena felt the weight of it all, the stakes pressing in. Fail here and the colonies below had no shield left. But she'd be damned if she let these invaders claim victory without a fight. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the console as the Aurora's engines thrummed to life, the vibration humming through her boots like a distant heartbeat. The bridge was a cocoon of dim lights and flickering holograms, the air thick with the scent of recycled oxygen and faint ozone from overworked circuits. Beside her, Lieutenant Marcus Hale punched coordinates into the NAV system, his fingers flying with the precision of someone who'd simulated this escape 1,000 times in his head. Jump drives at 80%, he muttered, his voice steady but edged with the grit of a man who'd seen too many simulations turn real. Across from them, Engineer Kira Novak hunched over a diagnostic panel, her wiry frame taut as she bypassed a failing relay. She was the cautious one, always double-checking, but now her eyes burned with quiet fire. The alert klaxons blared again, Rha'Tol's fleet closing in, their sensor ghosts painting the main viewer in predatory red arcs. Earth's orbit was a graveyard already, littered with the husks of UN ships from the first skirmish, but the Aurora was one of the last intact vessels, a stealth corvette built for evasion, not glory. Elena's mind raced back to the Admiral's transmission, his scaled face leering from the comms. Surrender your world, primitives, or join the debris. Human ingenuity had bought them time, jamming signals, deploying decoys. But the alien armada's sheer mass was overwhelming, their plasma lances carving through defenses like a scythe through wheat. Charge complete, Marcus announced, slamming the engage lever. The ship lurched as space folded around them, stars streaking into blue-shifted blurs. But the jump wasn't clean. A shudder rippled through the hull and Kira swore under her breath. Feedback from their disruptor field. We're not fully slipped, holding pattern at best. Elena nodded, her jaw set. They'd planned for this. A micro-jump to the Lagrangian point, slingshot around a moonlet to shake pursuit. But plans had a way of fracturing under pressure. As the Aurora stabilized, the viewer cleared to show the asteroid belt's jagged sprawl, a minefield of tumbling rocks that Earth's early miners had abandoned decades ago. It was their ace. Human charts mapped every fragment while the aliens navigated by brute sensor sweeps. Thread the needle, Elena ordered, her voice cutting through the hum. Marcus grinned faintly, the witty spark in his eyes unbroken. Aye, Captain. Let's give these squids a geometry lesson. He angled the ship into the belt's outer fringes, thrusters firing in precise bursts to weave between boulders the size of city blocks. Kira's panel lit up with warnings. Incoming signatures, 3 interceptors closing fast. They're adapting, using our exhaust trail. The aliens weren't stupid. Rha'Tol's vanguard had quantum drives that could punch through debris fields, but at a cost. Elena leaned forward, tracing a path on the overlay. Divert power to shields on the port side. Marcus, plot a ricochet off that cluster at bearing 247. The plan was risky, using the rocks as both shield and projectile. But it was theirs, born from late-night sims in the mess hall, fueled by black market coffee and stubborn hope. The first interceptor loomed into view, its hull a sleek obsidian curve etched with glowing runes, firing a probing energy bolt that glanced off a spinning asteroid, shattering it into a spray of gravel. The Aurora banked hard, debris pinging against the hull like hail on tin. Elena felt the G-forces press her into the seat, her pulse syncing with the ship's rhythm. Evasive pattern delta, she said, and Marcus complied, the corvette darting like a minnow through the giants. But the second interceptor anticipated, its lance slicing across their bow. Alarms wailed as a shield emitter fried, sparks dancing across Kira's station. She slammed a fist on the override, rerouting AUX power with hands that didn't shake. Shields at 60%. We can't take another hit like that. Marcus shot her a look. Then don't let them line up, Inji. I've got this. His banter was light, but sweat beaded on his forehead, the weight of their small crew, 30 souls, including the cryosleepers in the hold, hanging unspoken. Elena watched the scopes, the aliens' formation tightening. Rha'Tol himself wasn't here, but his lieutenants were relentless, their comms crackling with guttural commands. The third interceptor swung wide, trying to flank, but Marcus anticipated, firing a grapnel drone that latched onto a boulder and yanked the Aurora into a slingshot spin. The rock hurtled toward the flanker, crumpling its forward array in a bloom of fire and venting plasma. One down. Cheers erupted briefly on the bridge, cut short by the remaining pair accelerating. The belt's shadows deepened as they plunged toward a dense cluster, the Aurora's lights carving fleeting paths through the dust. Elena's mind whirred. They needed an out, not just survival. Kira, can we rig the waste vents to mimic a hull breach? Draw them in close. Kira paused, then nodded, her cautious nature yielding to the spark of the idea. It'll vent our recyclers, but yeah. Give us 10 minutes of ghosting. As she worked, the ship shuddered again, another bolt grazing the aft. Marcus cursed, adjusting course. They're learning our moves, Cap. We pull this off, it's because we're uglier, not prettier. Elena allowed a tight smile. Ugly it was, human grit against alien precision. The stakes clawed higher. Fail here and the Aurora joined the orbit graveyard, Earth's last whisper silenced. But in the chaos of the belt, with her crew's hands steady on the controls, she felt the tide shift, if only by a degree. Lieutenant Marco Ruiz wiped the sweat from his brow, the dim glow of the engineering console casting harsh shadows across his face. The Endeavour's auxiliary control room hummed with the low thrum of overtaxed recyclers, air thick with the scent of ozone and recycled sweat. Elena Vasquez paced behind him, her boots clanging softly against the grated floor, eyes fixed on the tactical overlay flickering on the bulkhead screen. "They're tightening the noose," Elena said, her voice steady but edged with gravel. She jabbed a finger at the holographic display, where red icons swarmed like angry hornets around the debris field. Rha'Tol's fleet had pushed closer, their sensor sweeps cutting through the junk like knives. "If we don't spoof that relay soon, they'll pinpoint our position and turn us into confetti." Marco's fingers danced over the keyboard, coaxing the jury-rigged algorithm to life. He'd spent the last shift splicing human code with salvaged alien tech. Nothing fancy, just enough to mimic the signature of a drifting satellite. Cautious as ever, he double-checked the power draw. One surge and they'd light up brighter than a supernova. "It's not the spoofing I'm worried about, Cap. It's the timing. That graveyard belt's a minefield of our own making. One wrong vector, and we're the ones orbiting the scrap heap." She stopped pacing, leaning over his shoulder. Her breath was warm against his neck, a rare moment of closeness in the chaos. Elena had always been the brave one, charging into the unknown with a grin that dared the stars to blink first. Marco? He preferred plans with margins for error, but out here margins were luxuries they couldn't afford. "Then make it right. We've got the debris on our side, Earth's old sats wrecks from the war. Rha'Tol thinks it's just clutter. Show him it's a weapon." The console beeped, a green light flashing as the algorithm synced. Marco exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "Uploading now. It'll bounce their pings off a dozen ghosts. Buys us maybe an hour." He glanced up, catching her eye. There was no room for doubt in her gaze, just that fierce determination that had kept them alive through 3 skirmishes already. Alarms blared suddenly, red strobes painting the room in bloody hues. The overlay updated. A Xari scout ship had slipped through the outer edge of the belt, its sleek form weaving between tumbling hulks of metal. Elena straightened, hand instinctively going to her sidearm. "Damn. They're probing. Marco, reroute auxiliary power to the forward arrays. Give me eyes on that thing." He nodded, fingers flying again, but his mind raced ahead. The plan had been simple. Lure Rha'Tol's vanguard into the belt, where the debris could be nudged into kill zones with precisely timed thruster bursts. But this scout was too close too fast. If it got a clear scan, the whole fleet would follow and their clever trap would collapse like a house of cards. Elena activated the comms, her voice cutting through the static. "Bridge, this is Vasquez. We've got a bogey in Sector 7. Prep the grapples, we're going manual. No panic, just action." That's what she did. Turned fear into fuel. Marco sealed the upload, the spoof holding for now. But as the scout's icon pulsed brighter, closing in, he felt the weight of it all. One mistake and the Endeavour would join the graveyard. He pushed the thought down, focusing on the readouts. "Erase hot, Cap. We've got a window, 30 seconds to nudge that cluster at bearing 240. She clapped his shoulder, already moving toward the hatch. "That's my engineer. Let's make some debris of our own." The ship shuddered as thrusters fired, the deck tilting under their feet. Outside, through the narrow viewport, the belt churned, a vast silent storm of twisted girders and shattered panels, remnants of humanity's defiant stand. The scout darted closer, its sensors probing blindly into the spoofed shadows. Marco watched the overlay, heart pounding. The cluster of debris, old solar arrays and fuel pods, shifted on command, propelled by the Endeavour's hidden pulses. It swung into the scout's path like a flail, silent and inevitable. The holographic icon winked out, replaced by a blooming debris cloud. Elena's voice crackled over the intercom. "Clean hit. But that's 1 down, 100 to go. Rha'Tol's not going to like this." Marco allowed himself a grim smile, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. The Admiral's arrogance had blinded him to the belt's potential, But victory here came at a cost. Their power reserves were dipping and the spoof wouldn't hold forever. As the Endeavour slipped deeper into the shadows, Marco wondered how long they could dance on the edge before the music stopped. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the Defiant's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with sensor data, painting the void in stark reds and blues. Earth's graveyard belt loomed ahead, a swirling chaos of shattered satellites, derelict stations, and the jagged remnants of what used to be orbital defenses. What the Arigazor called a primitive scrapyard was, to her crew, a testament to human stubbornness. Every piece of junk meticulously repositioned over weeks of frantic labor. "Status on the decoys, Lieutenant?" Elara asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She glanced at Marco Reyes, the wiry engineer hunched over his console, fingers dancing across holographic controls. "Locked and loaded, Cap," Marco replied, not looking up. His usual wit was muted, replaced by the focused intensity of a man who'd jury-rigged half the belt's traps himself. "The false beacons are pulsing just like their NAV charts expect. They'll think it's a clear lane through the debris until it isn't." Beside her, Dr. Lena Kaur leaned forward, her sharp eyes scanning the tactical overlay. The xenobiologist-turned-reluctant strategist had argued fiercely against this plan in the early days, calling it a suicide gambit. But necessity had won out. With the Arachizor armada bearing down, half their fleet already vaporized, they had no choice but to turn the graveyard into a weapon. "Their lead ships are accelerating," she said, pointing to a cluster of blips. "Admiral Rha'Tol's flagship is in the van. Arrogant as ever." Elara nodded, suppressing a grim smile. Rha'Tol's transmissions had dripped with condescension. Promises of swift subjugation, lectures on humanity's inevitable obsolescence. He'd claimed the orbit like a conqueror surveying spoils, blind to the web they'd woven. The Defiant hung back in the belt's shadow, one of a dozen stealth-modified corvettes playing ghost. Their job wasn't glory. It was precision strikes, turning momentum against the invaders. A proximity alert chirped, sharp and insistent. Marco swore under his breath. "Incoming scan sweep. They're probing deeper than we modeled." "Evade pattern Delta," Elara ordered, her mind racing through contingencies. The ship shuddered as thrusters fired in a corkscrew burst, slipping behind a tumbling hunk of old ISS module. Debris pinged off the hull like hail on tin, each impact a reminder of the thin line between cover and coffin. Lena's console beeped. "They're locking onto something. Wait, it's one of ours." The Vanguard decoy array just lit up. Alara's jaw tightened. The Vanguard had been their scout, a battered frigate crewed by volunteers who'd known the risks. The Arachizor pierced the illusion now. "All ships, initiate Phase 2, she transmitted on the encrypted band. "Light 'em up." Across the belt, hidden emitters activated. Microwaves pulsed from disguised wrecks, feeding false data to the alien sensors. Open corridors, safe drifts, a welcoming path to Earth's blue marble. Rha'Tol's fleet surged forward, engines flaring like predatory eyes in the dark. Marco wiped sweat from his brow. "Cap, if this works, it'll be the slingshot heard round the galaxy. But if their admiral's half as smart as he boasts." "He's smart," Elara cut in, her tone brooking no doubt. "But we're desperate. And desperate makes us dangerous." The view screen captured it then. A single, striking vista. The Arachizor dreadnoughts slicing through the void, their sleek hulls gleaming under Sol's unfiltered glare, oblivious to the noose tightening around them. Elara felt the weight of it, the lives hanging on this feint. One wrong drift, one glitch in the web, and the graveyard would claim them all. But as the lead destroyer edged into the kill zone, Marco's grin broke through. "Contacts confirmed. They're committed." Elara allowed herself a breath. The trap was sprung. Now came the unraveling. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the console, her knuckles whitening against the humming metal. The bridge of the UNS Vanguard thrummed with the low growl of overtaxed engines, and the air recyclers wheezed like an old man after a sprint. She glanced at her crew, three faces she knew better than her own reflection after months in the black. Lieutenant Marco Ruiz, her wiry engineer, hunched over a flickering holoscreen, fingers dancing across the interface. Beside him, Dr. Lena Korsakov, the xenobiologist, chewed her lip, eyes darting between readouts of the debris field ahead. And in the pilot's seat, Sergeant Jamal Hayes, broad-shouldered and unflinching, adjusted the thrusters with a casual flick that belied the sweat beading on his brow. "Status on the salvage bots?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. The graveyard belt loomed on the main viewer, a swirling chaos of shattered hulls and twisted alloy remnants of Earth's orbital defenses pulverized by Rha'Tol's fleet. What was left was a minefield of opportunity and death, and they needed every scrap to jury-rig their counterstrike. Marco didn't look up. 3 bots operational, Cap. The 4th clipped a microdebris shard, lost a manipulator arm. "I'm rerouting power to compensate." His tone was clipped, efficient, the caution of a man who'd seen too many good plans unravel in vacuum. Lena leaned forward, her braids swinging like a pendulum. "The Admiral's signatures are faint, but they're there. Those Krellish wrecks have exotic alloys. Could reinforce our shields if we extract the cores intact. But the radiation spikes. One wrong grab and we're cooking from the inside." Jamal snorted, a wry grin cracking his focus. "Cooking? I'd take that over what Rha'Tol's got planned. Remember the Sims? His boarding parties don't ask nicely." He banked the ship gently, threading through a cluster of spinning wreckage that glinted like broken teeth under the distant sun. Elena nodded, pushing down the memory of the colony feeds, worlds glassed without mercy. This wasn't about revenge, it was survival, pure and gritty. "All right. Prioritize the Krellish frigate fragment at bearing 247. Marco, sync the bots. Lena, monitor for alien tech signatures. Jamal, keep us dancing." The ship shuddered as they dove deeper into the belt. Debris pinged off the hull like erratic rain, each impact a reminder of the thin line between hunter and hunted. Elena watched the viewer as the first bot latched onto a jagged hull section, its claws biting into iridescent metal that shimmered unnaturally. Success for now. But as the second bot approached, a shadow flickered, not debris but something deliberate. A probe? Rha'Tol's remnants scavenging too? Contact. Marco barked, slamming a override. Alarms blared, red lights strobing across the bridge. Lena's eyes widened. "It's a sentry drone. Krellish design but modified. Admiral's techs must have repurposed it." Jamal's hands flew over the controls. "Evasive. Holding pattern Delta 7. The Vanguard twisted, thrusters flaring blue against the void. The drone unleashed a barrage, plasma lances slicing through the emptiness, one grazing the third bot and turning it to vapor in a silent bloom of fire. Elena's heart pounded. They were exposed, the belt's cover turning against them as fragments ricocheted from the blasts. "Counter it," she ordered, mind racing. "No time for heroics, think like the enemy." Rha'Tol's arrogance, relying on automated guardians assuming humans would scatter. "Jamal, sling a chunk of wreckage at it, use the mass driver on that derelict tug nearby." He didn't hesitate. On it. The ship surged, magnetic grapples snagging a massive tumbling engine nacelle. With a groan of strained systems they hurled it forward. The drone's sensors whirred, tracking the improvised projectile, but too late. The collision crumpled its chassis in a cascade of sparks, debris spraying like shrapnel. Silence fell, broken only by the hum of settling systems. Marco exhaled. "Bot secure. We've got the cores." Lena traced a finger over the scan. But the drone's signal bounced to something bigger. "They're onto us." Elena straightened, the weight of command settling heavier. The graveyard had given them tools, but at a cost. The Admiral's shadow was closing in and their window was narrowing. "Patch the alloys into the shields. We adapt or we join the belt. Let's move." The crew sprang into action, the bridge alive with purpose. Outside, the stars wheeled indifferently, but in here grit forged their path forward, one clever dodge at a time. Lieutenant Jax wiped the sweat from his brow, the dim glow of the console casting harsh shadows across his face. The Vanguard's engineering bay hummed with the strain of jury-rigged repairs, sparks flickering like distant stars from an exposed conduit. Elena's voice crackled over the intercom, steady but edged with urgency. "Jax, we've got incoming debris at Vector 7. Can you buy us more thrust without shaking us apart?" He gritted his teeth, fingers dancing over the controls. The ship groaned as he diverted power from life support. Again. "On it, Cap. But if we push the engines any harder we'll be orbiting on prayers." A wry grin tugged at his lips, though no one could see it. That's how he coped, equipped to cut the tension even when the void outside threatened to swallow them whole. Myra's hands gripped the helm tighter, her eyes locked on the holographic display. The graveyard belt stretched before them, a swirling chaos of shattered hulls and twisted metal, Earth's last stand against Rha'Tol's fleet. What had been a clean orbital insertion for the aliens now trapped their remnants in this lethal maze. But the Vanguard wasn't built for dodging minefields of wreckage. She was a scout vessel, nimble but fragile. Debris fields thickening, Mira reported, her voice calm, almost detached, the caution that kept her alive through a dozen skirmishes. She banked hard left, the ship shuddering as a jagged spar whipped past the viewport, close enough to etch a scar on the hull. Elena stood on the bridge, arms crossed, watching the readouts. The Admiral's flagship, the Dread Sovereign, lurked somewhere in this mess, damaged but not defeated. Their plan had been simple. Use the belt's hazards against him, lure him into a choke point, and finish the job with a well-placed torpedo. But simplicity had a way of unraveling. The early feint, firing decoy drones to draw his fire, had backfired spectacularly. Rha'Tol's gunners had anticipated it, turning the drones into shrapnel that now peppered their own shields. Shields at 40%, Mira said, not looking up. If we don't clear this sector soon, we'll be joining the graveyard. Elena nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. Brave as she was, charging into the Admiral's domain felt like tempting fate. Rha'Tol wasn't just a commander. He was a tactician, his species' pride in precision warfare making him relentless. Yet humans had grit, the kind that turned desperation into defiance. Jack's status. Thrusters boosted, but it's like flooring it in a junkyard, he replied, the intercom buzzing with static. A sudden jolt rocked the ship. Another near miss. Whoa, that was a big one. Cap, you seeing this? Sensors picking up a shadow on R6. Could be him. Elena's pulse quickened. She punched up the rear feed, the image resolving into a sleek alien cruiser weaving through the debris like a predator in fog. The Dread Sovereign's silhouette was unmistakable, its hull scarred but weapons hot. All hands, evasive pattern Delta. Mira, take us into the cluster at Mark 12. It's risky, but it'll mask us. Mira hesitated for a split second, her cautious nature flaring. Diving into the densest debris would shield them from scans, but one wrong move. She swallowed it down, fingers flying across the controls. The Vanguard surged forward, engines whining as they plunged into the heart of the belt. Chunks of metal loomed like ancient monoliths, the ship threading needles of space between them. A low rumble built in the deck plates, the proximity alarms chirping warnings. In the engineering bay, Jax braced against a bulkhead, rerouting coolant lines on the fly. Sweat stung his eyes, but he kept his focus, the witty edge in his mind sharpening into resolve. Come on, you beauty, he muttered to the ship as if sweet-talking a stubborn engine could will it through. Alarms blared, hull integrity dropping. He slammed a panel shut, diverting emergency power. It held barely. On the bridge, Elena watched the alien ship falter, its path blocked by the very wreckage their invasion had wrought. Rha'Tol's voice boomed over the open channel, distorted but imperious. Human vessel, you trespass in Dominion space. Surrender, and I may grant your crew mercy. She smirked, keying the calm. Admiral, this is your graveyard now. Earth's orbit isn't big enough for both of us. No bluster, just fact, her bravery in the quiet certainty of their fight. Mira pulled them out of the cluster, the Vanguard emerging scarred but intact. The Dread Sovereign fired a probing shot, the beam glancing off a drifting hull fragment instead. But as they gained distance, Elena saw the cost. Their shields flickered, life support straining from Jax's overrides. One more chase like that and they'd pay dearly. Regroup at Rally Point Bravo, she ordered. We've bought time, but Rha'Tol's adapting. We need a new angle. Jax exhaled in the bay, slumping against the console. The ship's hum steadied, but the ache in his shoulders reminded him. This triumph was fleeting, the stakes carving deeper with every maneuver. In the belt's eerie silence, the weight of Earth's defense pressed on, unyielding. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the stellar Vanguard's engines vibrating through her bones like a distant storm. The view screen flickered with debris fields, twisted hulks of Rha'Tol's Vanguard fleet, silent sentinels in Earth's shadowed orbit. Her team had whittled them down over weeks, Lena's jury-rigged EMP bursts turning shields to scrap, Marco's daring runs seeding mines that bloomed into fireballs. But now the Admiral's flagship loomed ahead, a behemoth of obsidian hull and pulsing energy veins, its escorts fanning out like predators closing on wounded prey. "Status on the disruptor array?" Elara asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. Sweat beaded on her forehead. The air recyclers strained against the overload from their last skirmish. Lena hunched over her console, fingers flying across holographic keys, her wiry frame taut as a bowstring. 80% charged, Captain. But their point defenses are adapting. Last burst only grazed that frigate. If we push closer, we'll be Swiss cheese before we fire. Marco leaned back in the pilot's seat, flashing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. Swiss cheese? I've flown through worse. Give me the vector and I'll thread us right up their exhaust ports. His hands danced on the controls, the ship bucking slightly as he adjusted for a micrometeorite swarm. Elara shook her head, calculating risks in her mind's eye. The plan was simple. Slip into the graveyard belt's cover, use the wreckage as a shield, then unleash the array to cripple the flagship's core. Claim Earth's orbit? Rha'Tol had boasted that from intercepted transmissions. Now his armada orbited a human-made tomb. But simplicity had its limits. Tie-bred failure. Their feint 2 hours ago had drawn fire, costing them a drone wing and singeing the Vanguard's hull. Incoming hail, Lena announced, her cautious nature edging her tone. It's the Admiral himself. Audio only, probably doesn't want us seeing him sweat. Patch it through, Elara said. No time for games. The speakers crackled and a voice like grinding gravel filled the bridge. Human vessel, this is Admiral Rha'Tol of the Kresh Dominion. Your primitives' tricks end here. Surrender your craft and I may spare your fragile world. Resist and join the debris. Elara leaned forward, her brave resolve hardening into steel. Admiral, your Dominion looks more like a scrapyard from here. We've turned your invasion into our asteroid belt. Pull back or we'll add your throne to the collection. Laughter echoed deep and mocking. Bold words from insects. My sensors pierce your veil. Launching interceptors. Now. Alarms blared. Marco swore under his breath, yanking the yoke. The Vanguard dove, engines roaring as red dots swarmed the tactical display. Dozens of Kresh fighters, sleek and deadly, peeling from the flagship's bays. Evade pattern Delta. Lara barked. The ship twisted, G-forces pressing them into seats. A striking image burned on the view screen. An interceptor exploding against a drifting satellite, its wreckage blooming like a metal flower in the void. Lena's hands blurred, rerouting power. Array at 90%. Holding fire until we're in range. Marco watched the debris field. One wrong turn and we're part of it. I'm on it, he replied, witty edge sharpening his focus. These bugs fly like they own the stars. Time to show Earth's traffic laws. The pursuit intensified. Interceptors buzzed close, lasers scoring the shields. Sparks danced across the bulkheads. Elara's mind raced. The plan was backfiring already. They'd underestimated the flagship's reserves. These weren't stragglers but fresh killers, coordinated with eerie precision. A direct hit rocked the ship, consoles flickering. Shields at 60. Lena yelled, her voice cracking for the first time. Caution one out, she slammed an auxiliary boost, buying seconds. Marco wove through a cluster of allied wrecks, the Vanguard scraping hulls with a screech that echoed in their helmets. One interceptor clipped a girder and detonated, shrapnel pinging off their armor. But more closed in, herding them toward open space, away from cover. We can't shake them like this, Elara admitted, hating the words. Grit defined her crew, Lena's inventions, Marco's flair, but pride wouldn't save them. Lena, vent the auxiliary thrusters. Fake a cripple. Lena nodded, overriding safeties. Explosive puffs erupted from the side, the ship listing dramatically. The interceptors pounced, overconfident. Now Marco, full burn. Elara ordered. He punched it, the Vanguard surging back into the belt's heart. Interceptors overshot, colliding in the sudden debris storm. 2 more fell to Lena's quick-targeted pulse. Array ready, Lena breathed, wiping sweat. Firing on your mark. Elara watched the flagship grow, its underbelly exposed in the chaos. Stakes pressed heavy. Fail here and Rha'Tol's fleet regrouped, Earth's defenses crumbling. But they were humans, ingenuity in the breach. Mark. The beam lanced out, a spear of blue fire striking true. The flagship shuddered, lights dimming along its spine. Cheers erupted on the bridge, short and fierce. But Rha'Tol's voice cut through, strained now. You delay the inevitable. My reserves approach from lunar shadow. Alara's triumph soured. The plan had worked, but at what cost? Scans showed their shields critically low, a fuel leak hissing in engineering. The graveyard belt closed around them, a reminder that every victory carved deeper scars. Marco plotted their escape, Lena patched systems, and Alara stared into the void, wondering. The dim glow of emergency lights flickered across the bridge of the UNS Vanguard, casting long shadows that danced like ghosts over the consoles. Captain Elena Voss gripped the armrest of her chair, her knuckles white against the worn leather. The alien fleet's debris field loomed on the main view screen, a swirling graveyard of twisted metal and frozen vapors where Earth's orbit had become a no-man's land. Her crew had whittled down Rha'Tol's armada piece by piece, but the Admiral's flagship, the Iron Maw, still hung there like a predator biding its time, its hull scarred but unyielding. Status on the drone swarm? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the knot in her gut. She glanced at Marco Ruiz, who hunched over a makeshift terminal jury-rigged from salvaged parts. His fingers flew across the holographic interface, eyes narrowed in concentration. They're in position, Cap, Marco replied, a wry grin cracking his grease-streaked face. 200 microdrones, each packing a kiloton of shaped plasma. If we sync the detonation right, it'll turn that dreadnought into confetti. But their point defense grid is adapting. Last sim showed a 40% failure rate. Lieutenant Kira Chin, stationed at Tactical, shook her head from her post. Her cautious nature showed in the tight line of her lips, the way she double-checked every readout. It's too risky. We've lost 3 pilots already today. If the swarm scatters, we're exposing our flank to their corvettes. Elena weighed it, the hum of the ship's straining engines underscoring the silence. The Vanguard was the last carrier in the fight, its bays emptied of fighters, running on fumes and sheer will. Rha'Tol's forces had blockaded the planet below, cutting off resupply, but human grit had turned the tide, orbit by orbit. They couldn't afford another stalemate. Launch them. Marco tweaked the evasion patterns. Make 'em dance like fireflies in a storm. The order rippled through the bridge. Kira initiated the sequence, her fingers hesitant but precise. The drones ejected from the Vanguard's underbelly in a silent plume, tiny sparks vanishing into the void. On the screen, they wove through the debris, dodging laser fire that lit up the blackness like fleeting stars. Marco leaned back, wiping sweat from his brow. They rerouted their IFF signals to mimic junk debris. Should buy us a window. But the window slammed shut faster than expected. Alarms blared as the Iron Maw's sensors pierced the ruse. A barrage of railgun slugs tore through the swarm, shredding dozens in bursts of ionized gas. Elena's heart pounded, the view screen filled with the chaos, fragments spiraling toward the Vanguard. Incoming! Kira shouted, her voice cracking for the first time. The ship lurched as countermeasures fired, thrusters flaring to evade. A near miss rocked the deck, sparks erupting from a bulkhead. Plan B, Elena snapped, unstrapping herself. Marco, vent the auxiliary plasma from the engineering bay, make it look like we're venting reactors. Kira, plot an intercept course. We're going in close. Marco's eyes widened, but he nodded, already scrambling. You're insane, Cap. But yeah, that could work. He dashed from the bridge, toolkit clanging against his thigh. The Vanguard surged forward, engines screaming as it plunged into the debris field. Elena watched the Iron Maw grow larger, its massive form a silhouette against the Earth's blue curve. Rha'Tol's vessel was a behemoth, all jagged spines and glowing energy vents, but up close the scars from previous skirmishes were evident, gouges where human missiles had bitten deep. In the bowels of the ship, Marco wrestled with the venting controls, sweat stinging his eyes. The plasma release was a desperate bluff, designed to mimic a catastrophic failure and draw the enemy's fire away from the remaining drones. Pipes groaned under pressure, and a hiss filled the corridor as superheated gas escaped into space. He patched a comm line back to the bridge. Venting now, hope they take the bait. On the bridge the ploy worked. The Iron Maw's batteries shifted, pounding the vanguard with suppressing fire while ignoring the regrouping swarm. Explosions bloomed around them, the ship shuddering like a leaf in a gale. Kira's hands blurred over the controls, weaving through wreckage that could shred their hull. "Swarms reforming," she reported, tension easing slightly from her voice. "Impact in 30 seconds. Elena allowed herself a breath, but it caught as a corvette broke from the alien formation, vectoring straight for them. Its weapons charged, a deadly lance of plasma building. "Evasive. Marco, any tricks left down there?" His voice crackled over the calm, laced with that familiar wit. "1. Rerouting power to the forward shields. It's gonna fry half our systems, but it'll give us a bubble against that shot." "Do it." The order was unspoken, but he acted. The Vanguard's nose glowed as energy surged, a makeshift shield flaring to life just as the corvette fired. The plasma bolt slammed home, dispersing in a harmless corona that lit the bridge in ethereal blue. The drones struck then, a synchronized fury slamming into the Iron Maw's underbelly. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull, venting atmosphere and crew into the void. Cheers erupted on the bridge, short, ragged, earned. But victory soured fast. The corvette, undeterred, closed the gap, its boarding pods launching like hornets. Elena's jaw set. "Boarders incoming. Kira, seal the outer decks. Marco, get back here, we're not done." As the first pod latched onto the hull with a metallic screech, the weight of the cost settled in. Another scar on the Vanguard, another layer of debris in the belt. Earth's orbit was theirs, but at what price? The fight pressed on, unyielding. The dim glow of the auxiliary console cast long shadows across the bridge of the UNS Vanguard, where Captain Elena Reyes gripped the armrests of her command chair, her knuckles whitening. Sweat beaded on her forehead, not from the failing life support but from the weight of what came next. Jax hunched over the engineering panel beside her, his fingers dancing across the holographic keys like a pianist in a storm. "Shields at 20%, he muttered, voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "One more hit from that cruiser and we're vapor." Elena nodded, eyes locked on the tactical display. The alien fleet, Rha'Tol's vaunted armada, had pushed them into a desperate spiral through the debris field, what was once Earth's orbital graveyard now a lethal maze of twisted metal and silent hulks. The Xari ships, sleek and predatory, darted like sharks among the ruins, their plasma lances carving glowing scars through the void. But Elena had seen the pattern in their aggression. Overconfidence. Rha'Tol's admiralty believed humans broke under pressure, that ingenuity was no match for raw firepower. She intended to prove them wrong. "Helm, adjust course 047, she ordered, her voice cutting through the hum of straining engines. Ensign Tarek, the young navigator with a scar running down his cheek from the first skirmish, complied without hesitation. The Vanguard shuddered as it banked, thrusters flaring to weave between a cluster of derelict satellites. A Xari interceptor streaked past, its shot grazing the hull with a metallic screech that echoed through the decks. Jax glanced up, his wiry frame taut. "They're herding us toward the core wreckage, the old ISS remnants. If we hit that at this speed." He didn't finish. The core was a tangled knot of reinforced girders and fuel cells, a death trap even for smaller craft. "That's the point," Elena said, leaning forward. Her mind raced through the sims they'd run in stolen hours. The graveyard wasn't just cover, it was a weapon. Humans had built it, after all. Decades of launches leaving a legacy of scrap that could be turned against invaders. "Initiate the Cascade Protocol. Let's give Admiral Rha'Tol a history lesson." Jax's eyes widened, but he punched in the sequence. Bursts of electromagnetic pulses fired from the Vanguard's modified cargo bays. Repurposed mining drones, jury-rigged with scavenged Xari tech from their first kill. The pulses rippled outward, invisible to the naked eye but deadly to the alien sensor nets. Xari ships faltered, their formations fracturing as targeting systems glitched, painting false ghosts on their displays. On the tactical screen, chaos bloomed. Two interceptors collided in a bloom of fire, their wreckage spinning into the path of a larger destroyer. Elena allowed herself a grim smile. Now Tarek, full burn to the core. Draw them in. The Vanguard surged, engines roaring defiance. Alarms blared as debris pinged off the hull, but they plunged deeper, the bridge vibrating with the strain. Behind them, the Xari pursued, their admiral's flagship looming like a shadowed behemoth, its cannons charging with ominous blue glow. Elena felt the pull of acceleration in her gut, a reminder of the stakes. Her crew, 50 souls, many friends lost already, depended on this gambit. Rha'Tol had come to claim Earth's orbit, broadcasting ultimatums of subjugation. Instead they'd found a graveyard and Elena was about to make it their tomb. A proximity alert screamed. The destroyer was closing, its disrupted sensors forcing a blind charge. Jack sealed the bulkheads, his face pale. If the cascade holds. It will, Elena said, more to convince herself. She activated the comms, patching through to the scattered human resistance fleet, remnants of carriers and fighters hiding in the belt's shadows. All units converge on Vector 9. It's time. Static crackled, then voices responded. Affirmations from captains she'd fought beside, engineers like Jack's who'd patched hulls under fire. No speeches, just resolve. The core loomed ahead, a jagged silhouette against the stars. The destroyer fired wildly, bolts scorching past. Elena braced as the vanguard skimmed the edge, gravitational tugs yanking at the frame. Then, the trap sprang. The cascade pulses, amplified by the graveyard's metallic mass, created a feedback storm, an artificial ion tempest that fried the Xari's inertial dampeners. The destroyer listed, engines failing, and plowed straight into the core. A chain reaction ignited, fuel cells from the old station rupturing in a cascade of white-hot explosions, shearing through the alien hull like paper. Debris erupted outward, a storm of shrapnel that caught 2 more Xari ships in its wake. The bridge erupted in cheers, Tarek pumping a fist, but Elena silenced them with a raised hand. Rha'Tol's flagship had veered away, damaged but intact, its silhouette retreating into the belt's haze. "Damage report," she demanded. Jack scanned his readouts. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Life support holding, but we've lost auxiliary power. And, comms are jammed. That tempest cut us off from the fleet." Elena's jaw tightened. The victory was Pyrrhic. Isolation in the graveyard meant vulnerability. Rha'Tol wouldn't retreat, he'd adapt, send boarding parties or worse. She stood, ignoring the ache in her legs from hours in the chair. "Patch what you can, Jax. Tarek, plot an evasion course. We're not done yet." As the vanguard limped deeper into the shadows, Elena gazed at the drifting wreckage outside the viewport, a monument to human persistence. The Admiral had claimed orbit once. Now it claimed him piece by piece. But the cost mounted. Another ship lost, more lives hanging by threads. She wondered how many more gambles they could afford before the belt swallowed them. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the auxiliary engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with static, painting the bridge in erratic blue flashes that mirrored the storm of debris outside. Her team, small, battered but unbroken, huddled around the tactical console. Engineer Raj Patel, his fingers flying over patched-together circuits. Lieutenant Kira Voss, the sharp-eyed pilot whose quick reflexes had saved them from 3 collisions already. And Sergeant Tomas Hale, the wiry Marine who loaded ammo clips with the calm of a man folding laundry. "Status on the graph pulsar?" Elena asked, her voice steady despite the sweat beading on her forehead. The air recyclers wheezed, struggling against the metallic tang of scorched wiring. Raj didn't look up. "Online but finicky. One more power surge and it'll fry like an egg. We've rerouted everything non-essential, life support's at 60%. Kira leaned forward, eyes locked on the sensor feed. "Debris fields thickening ahead. Rha'Tol's lead cruiser is boxing us in from the flank. If we don't thread this needle in the next 2 minutes, we're scrap." Elena nodded, tracing the holographic map with her gaze. The graveyard belt, Earth's orbital cemetery of satellites, war junk, and now the husks of alien scouts, had become their ally and executioner. Humans hadn't built a fleet to match the Kroth Dominion. Instead, they turned the chaos into a weapon. Micro-explosives seeded into the wrecks, timed to detonate on command, pulling larger fragments into killing paths. But Rha'Tol, that scaled bastard, had adapted faster than expected. His admiral's ship, the Vexor, prowled the edges, its energy shields shrugging off the smaller hits while his fighters harried like wolves. "Options," Elena said, more to herself than the crew. Tomas grunted, chambering a round into his rifle. Pointless in vacuum, but it grounded him. Raj straightened, wiping grease from his brow. We could vent the forward bays, use the escape pods as decoys. Draw their fire while we pulse the cluster at bearing 247. Kira shook her head. Too risky. Vexor's got point defense lasers that'd vaporize the pods before they clear a click. And if the pulsar backfires? She trailed off, the implication hanging. They'd be the ones pulled into the grinder. The ship shuddered as a fragment pinged off the hull, a sharp crack echoing through the bulkheads. Elena felt the deck tilt slightly, gravity compensators straining. She thought of the billions below, safe for now only because ships like hers, makeshift corvettes cobbled from mining rigs and haulers, kept the Dominion pinned. No grand armadas, just grit and glue. Rha'Tol had laughed at that in his intercepted broadcasts, calling humans vermin in the stars. But vermin survived. New plan, Elena decided, her mind clicking through the variables like a puzzle. Kira, plot a slingshot trajectory off that derelict station at 210 Mark 5. Use its spin to boost us into the dense core. Raj, sync the pulsar to fire on our exit vector. Target the Vexor's engines, not the hull. Weaken their maneuverability, let the belt do the rest. Tomas smirked, slinging his rifle. Bait and switch. I like it. But if we miss, we're dancing in the debris ourselves. Better than dancing to Rha'Tol's tune, Elena replied. She keyed the comms. All hands brace for high G burn. This is for home. Kira's hands danced over the controls, the ship groaning as thrusters fired in staccato bursts. The view screen blurred with tumbling wreckage, shattered solar arrays glinting like broken mirrors, frozen fuel tanks tumbling end over end. A Kroth fighter streaked past, its plasma bolt grazing the shields in a shower of sparks. Alarms wailed, red lights pulsing. Shields at 40%. Raj shouted, slamming a panel shut. Holding, but not for long. Elena watched the station loom larger, a skeletal wheel scarred by micrometeorites. Kira timed it perfectly. The corvette whipped around the rim, artificial gravity flipping their stomachs as centrifugal force added to the thrust. For a heartbeat, weightlessness reigned, then crushing acceleration pinned them back. Now! Elena barked. Raj triggered the pulsar. Invisible gravitic waves rippled out, yanking a cascade of debris toward the Vexor's rear. The alien cruiser twisted, its engines flaring blue, but too late. A massive girder, propelled like a spear, slammed into the exhaust ports. Fire bloomed in the void, silent and ferocious as secondary explosions rippled along the hull. On the view screen, the Vexor listed, caught in the belt's inexorable pull. Rha'Tol's voice crackled over open channels, distorted but furious. Insolent primates. You delay the inevitable. Kira hooped, banking hard to evade a spinning satellite dish. Gotcha, Admiral. Orbiting your own graveyard now. But triumph soured fast. The corvette's hull screamed as a rogue chunk clipped the port nacelle. Consoles sparked and the lights dimmed to emergency red. Elena's chair lurched, harness biting into her shoulders. Damage report, she called, tasting blood from a split lip. Raj cursed in Hindi, patching a conduit. Nacelles breached. We're venting atmosphere, sealing bulkheads. But propulsion's down to auxiliary. We can't outrun the pursuit. Tomas was already at the hatch, toolkit in hand. I'll spacewalk patch it. Buy us time. Elena met his eyes, seeing the resolve there. No speeches, just action. Make it quick. Kira, keep us drifting with the flow. Play dead if you have to. Captain Elena Vasquez gripped the edge of the command console, her knuckles white against the humming metal. The bridge of the Resolute felt smaller than ever, the air thick with the scent of overheating circuits and recycled oxygen. Amir Khalid, the wiry engineer with a perpetual squint from poring over schematics. Lieutenant Teravas, the sharp-tongued pilot whose fingers danced over the controls like they were an extension of her will. And Sergeant Marco Ruiz, the broad-shouldered Marine who said little but moved like a storm when needed, huddled around the flickering holographic display. The alien fleet's remnants loomed outside, jagged silhouettes against the debris field that had once been Earth's high orbit. They're regrouping, Voss said, her voice steady but edged with fatigue. She tapped a sequence, zooming in on the lead cruiser. Its hull gleamed under the sun's harsh light, scarred but intact, broadcasting a signal that pulsed like a predator's heartbeat. Admiral Rha'Tol's voice crackled through the comms, distorted but imperious. Surrender your vessel, humans. Your ingenuity ends here. Join the graveyard or be scattered to it. Elena didn't flinch. She'd heard worse threats in the Sims back on the ground, before the invasion turned everything to ash. Ignore him, she murmured, eyes fixed on the display. The plan they'd cobbled together in the last cycle, using the debris as a slingshot to ram the aliens' weak point, had worked too well. Too many of their own satellites and wrecks had been caught in the cascade, turning the orbit into a lethal maze. But Rha'Tol's ship had taken the brunt, its engines flickering erratically. Now, with their power reserves dipping into the red, the Resolute was a sitting duck. Khalid adjusted his glasses, sweat beading on his forehead. The gravitic disruptor is at 47% capacity. If we fire again, we risk tearing a hole in our own hull. He glanced at Elena, his cautious nature showing in the way he chewed his lip. Captain, we could negotiate. Buy time to repair. Ruiz snorted from his station, checking his rifle's charge with methodical clicks. Negotiate with bugs that glassed our cities? Oh, we hit them hard like before. His bravery was the kind forged in the ruins of Buenos Aires, where he'd pulled Elena from a collapsing bunker. But even he couldn't hide the limp from that day, a reminder that grit had costs. Elena weighed their words, the weight of a billion ghosts pressing on her. The external challenge wasn't just the aliens anymore. It was the belt itself, a swirling graveyard of twisted metal and frozen volatiles that could shred them as easily as the enemy. One wrong maneuver and they'd add to the debris. Voss, plot a vector through the outer ring. Use the junk as cover. Khalid, reroute auxiliary power to shields. Make it count. Ruiz, prep the boarding team. If we get close, we finish this inside. Voss's fingers flew, the ship groaning as thrusters fired in short bursts. The Resolute shuddered, weaving through a cluster of shattered comm-sats that spun lazily like forgotten toys. Alarms blared, a proximity warning as a chunk of alien wreckage tumbled toward them, its edges glowing from re-entry heat. Hold on, Voss gritted out, banking hard. The impact rattled Elena's teeth, but they cleared it, emerging into a narrow lane where the stars peeked through the haze. Rha'Tol's cruiser loomed larger now, its weapons arrays charging with ominous whine audible even through the hull. A plasma bolt lanced out, grazing their flank. Sparks erupted from a panel, and Khalid dove to seal it, his hands blistering on the hot wiring. Shields at 22%, he shouted. The risk was real. Another hit and the disruptor would overload, venting atmosphere into the void. Elena activated the comms herself, her voice calm, adventurous fire in her eyes. Admiral, you claimed our orbit. But humans don't yield skies we built with our hands. Your fleet's broken, ours adapts. It wasn't a speech, just truth, laced with the wit that had kept her crew laughing through the blackouts. The aliens' response was a barrage, but Voss anticipated it, slingshotting around a massive derelict station. The maneuver pulled them into the cruiser's blind spot, close enough to see the panic in the bridge lights flickering through viewports. Ruiz grinned fiercely. Time to board. For Earth. Elena nodded, strapping into her suit. The plan was adapting, clever, born of desperation. But as the docking clamps engaged with a metallic screech, she felt the lingering cost. The Resolute wouldn't survive another dance like this. Their triumph, if it came, would be Pyrrhic, orbiting forever in the graveyard they'd helped create. Captain Elara Voss gripped the armrests of her command chair, the hum of the stalwart's engines vibrating through the deck like a distant heartbeat. The view screen flickered with the chaotic swirl of the graveyard belt, jagged remnants of alien cruisers and human fighters locked in an eternal, silent dance. Rha'Tol's flagship, the Vexor Prime, drifted at its center, a colossal shadow pierced by the scars of improvised railgun strikes and drone swarms. She could almost feel the Admiral's fury radiating across the void, his once mighty vessel now a crippled beast, engines cold and weapons silent. Status on the boarding teams? Elara asked, her voice steady despite the ache in her temples from days without sleep. Lieutenant Marco Reyes, her wiry tactical officer, tapped at his console, sweat beading on his brow. All teams reporting in, Captain. They've breached the outer hull. Resistance is scattered. The Krell are holding the bridge, but our EMP bursts took out their internal defenses. Elara nodded, her mind racing through the plan that had coalesced in the frantic hours after the ambush. It wasn't elegant, no grand fleet maneuvers or exotic weapons. Just humans doing what humans did best. Adapting, scraping by with what they had. They'd lured the Vexor Prime into the belt using decoy signals from salvaged beacons, then unleashed a barrage of mining drones reprogrammed on the fly to deliver kinetic payloads. The Admiral's arrogance had done the rest. He'd chased what he thought was a fleeing remnant of Earth's defense fleet right into the trap. A comms ping broke her reverie. Sergeant Lena Kor's voice crackled through, laced with the grit of someone who'd just fought through a zero-G firefight. "Captain, we've got the bridge in sight." Rha'Tol barricaded himself in the command sanctum with a dozen elites. "They're not surrendering." Elara leaned forward, the recycled air tasting metallic on her tongue. "No surprises there. You have the override codes we pulled from the wreck of the Sentinel." "Affirmative. But it'll take time to punch through their firewalls. If they trigger the self-destruct, they won't." Elara cut in, more to convince herself than Lena. "Stall them. Use the vent tricks we practiced. Reyes jammed their internal comms. No letting that bastard call for backup." The bridge crew moved like a well-oiled machine, fingers flying over interfaces cobbled from pre-invasion tech and alien scraps. Reyes initiated the jam, a digital snarl that would blind the Krell to their own ship's corridors. Elara watched the tactical overlay, red icons representing her teams weaving through the Vexor Prime's labyrinthine halls. Each blip was a life. Friends, crewmates, the last sparks of humanity's stand. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, a burst of static and Lena's voice again. "Codes in. Sanctum's opening. Aruz, he's coming out. Hands up, the arrogant prick." Elara allowed herself a tight smile. The view screen shifted as docking clamps engaged, the stalwart nudging close enough for a visual feed. There he was, Admiral Rha'Tol, towering and scaled, his iridescent armor dulled by scorch marks. Flanked by her marines, he stepped into the airlock, mandibles clicking in what might have been defiance or defeat. The transfer was swift, efficient. Rha'Tol was secured in the stalwart-'s brig, his massive form crammed into a cell designed for humans. As the doors sealed, he fixed Elara with those multifaceted eyes, a low rumble escaping his throat, translated by the suit's AI as, "Your ingenuity ends here, soft skins. The Empire will avenge this." Elara met his gaze, unflinching. "Tell them Earth's orbit is ours. And if they come again, we'll make another graveyard." She turned away as the doors hissed shut, the weight of victory settling like dust. The Vexor Prime would be stripped for parts, its hull towed to join the